this penny almost slipped through history unnoticed. A tiny copper coin, minted in 1962 with a simple D mark under the date. To most people, it looked like nothing more than pocket change, the kind you toss in a jar, spend at a gas station, or let rattle around at the bottom of a drawer. But what if I told you this little coin, this ordinary-looking penny, has shocked the coin world by being worth up to $1.8 million? A coin so small, so common, holding a secret powerful enough to change someone's life forever. Yet that's exactly what happened. And tonight, I'm going to take you into the mysterious world of the 1962 D Lincoln penny, a coin most people overlook, but a few lucky collectors have discovered hiding in plain sight. Now, let's rewind the clock. The year was 1962. John F. Kennedy was president. Gas was only 31 cents a gallon. And the Denver Mint was busy striking hundreds of millions of pennies for circulation. By all accounts, this was supposed to be a routine year. No major design changes, no big announcements. Just copper coins stamped with Lincoln's profile, passing from one American hand to another. But in the shadows of that massive minting operation, something went wrong. Somewhere in the machinery, a tiny mistake occurred. A striking error. A subtle doubling. A misalignment. The kind of minting flaw so rare, so microscopic, that only the sharpest collectors could ever catch it. And here's where the story turns unbelievable. One of these flawed 1962 D pennies eventually made its way into circulation. At first, nobody noticed. It was spent, exchanged, maybe dropped under a car seat. But then, years later, a collector spotted something strange. The details didn't look right. The date seemed unusual. The surfaces carried a shimmer not seen on ordinary cents. After careful examination, the truth came out. This was no ordinary coin. It was $1 million mistake hiding in plain sight. Auction houses began to whisper about it. Dealers scrambled to confirm. Could it really be true that a 1962 D penny, a coin you and I might have overlooked 1,000 times, had skyrocketed in value to over $1 million? The answer was yes. A near-perfect, error-marked 1962 D sold for a staggering $1.8 million, shocking even the most seasoned numismatists. Collectors were left in awe. Imagine spending a penny on a cup of coffee in the 60s, only for that same coin to be worth a fortune decades later. That's the magic, and the mystery, of this tiny piece of copper. But here's the part most people miss. It isn't just about finding a 1962 D penny. Millions of them were made, and the vast majority are worth only face value. The key lies in the details. The errors. The hidden markers. So, how do you know if your penny is the jackpot? You need to look closely. First, examine the date and mint mark under magnification. Some rare varieties show doubling on the numbers or letters. Others reveal a misstruck mint mark, slightly off-center or oddly shaped. Even the thickness of the rim, or the way Lincoln's bust is struck, can hold clues. And condition matters more than most people realize. A circulated coin with scratches or wear might bring hundreds. But a pristine, mint-state example, the kind with blazing red luster, the kind that looks like it just rolled off the press yesterday, that's where the $1 million miracles happen. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle because he cared enough to look twice. Because he refused to dismiss a coin as ordinary. And that's the lesson here. Hidden treasures don't always shine at first glance. Sometimes they're disguised as the most ordinary things in the world. Just imagine, right now, a 1962 D penny could be sitting in your change jar, your coin album, or even on the floor of your car. It might look dull, brown, and insignificant. But under the right conditions, with the right error, that penny could be worth up to $1.8 million. And here's the truth that keeps collectors searching day and night. For every legendary discovery, there are countless coins still out there, waiting to be found. Maybe in the hands of someone who doesn't know what they have. Maybe in your own pocket. So the next time you see a 1962 D penny, don't just glance at it. Study it. Look closer. Because if history has taught us anything, it's this: the smallest details can hide the biggest fortunes. Yes, a single Lincoln penny, the kind you might have tossed into a jar without a second thought, turned out to be a life-changing discovery. And the most shocking part? That penny was minted in 1967, with no mint mark. At first glance, the 1967 penny looks ordinary. A brown copper coin, Abraham Lincoln's face, and the familiar Lincoln Memorial on the back. But buried deep in its history lies a secret most collectors still don't know. A secret that has turned a 1-cent piece into a $1 million miracle. Back in the 1960s, the U.S. Mint was struggling with a coin shortage. Millions of Americans were hoarding coins, especially silver, because their melt value was worth more than face value. In the rush to keep money flowing through the economy, the Mint pumped out billions of pennies in 1967. But in the chaos, mistakes slipped through. Rare minting errors. Striking anomalies. Tiny imperfections that would go unnoticed by nearly everyone, except for the collectors who know what to look for. A man empties his pockets after a long day of work. Among his loose change is a 1967 penny, darker than the rest, slightly off-center. He shrugs, tosses it in a drawer, and forgets about it. Decades later, that same coin makes its way into the hands of an appraiser. What they found stunned the entire coin world. It wasn't just any penny, it was one of the rarest surviving errors from 1967. And when it finally hit the auction block, bidding exploded. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were desperate. And that 1-cent coin skyrocketed in value until the hammer dropped, at over $1.1 million. The answer is in the details most people miss. The 1967 Lincoln penny was struck during a year when the Mint suspended the use of mint marks altogether. So whether a penny came from Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, it had no mark to reveal its origin. That blank space is the first clue. But the real jackpot lies in rare errors, doubled dies, die cracks, off-center strikes, and coins struck on the wrong planchet. These are the freak accidents of coin production, and in 1967, they created some of the rarest modern pennies in existence. Collectors whisper about the infamous double die obverse, where Lincoln's date or lettering appears doubled. Others hunt for the striking errors where the coin is slightly misaligned, creating a lopsided image. And then there are the holy grails, pennies accidentally struck on silver or foreign coin blanks, mistakes that should have been caught but slipped through the cracks. Any one of these rare variants could transform a simple penny into a $1 million treasure. But here's the twist that most people don't realize. Because 1967 was a transitional year, with mint marks removed and production rushed, more errors occurred than usual. That means while most of these pennies are only worth a cent, a few extraordinary survivors are worth more than gold. One man's pocket change became a fortune because he knew what he had. Others tossed theirs aside, never knowing they let $1 million slip through their fingers. And yet, the story doesn't end there. Every so often, another 1967 penny surfaces. Sometimes at a flea market. Sometimes in an old jar of coins hidden in a basement. And every time, the discovery reignites the frenzy. Collectors rush, auction houses prepare, and the bidding wars begin. Because in the world of rare coins, finding one of these is like striking oil in your backyard. So how do you know if you have one? Look closely at the date, 1967. No mint mark beneath it. That part is normal. But don't stop there. Inspect the coin carefully under good light. Look for doubling in the lettering, especially around Liberty and In God We Trust. Check the reverse side for unusual spacing in the Lincoln Memorial or faint cracks in the metal. If the coin feels off-center or unusually light or heavy, that's another clue it could be a rare error. And if the color seems odd, darker, shinier, or more silver-like than copper, it might have been struck on the wrong planchet. That's the kind of mistake that turns a penny into a fortune. Collectors were shocked when the first $1 million 1967 penny crossed the auction block. But the real shock is this: there are likely more out there, hidden in old drawers, jars, and boxes of forgotten change. So before you dismiss that penny in your pocket, take a closer look. Because what looks like an ordinary coin could be your once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Imagine holding a fortune in your hand, a penny worth over $1 million. The year was 1978. Gas was cheap, disco music was fading, and in Denver, the U.S. Mint was striking billions of ordinary Lincoln pennies. Billions. The kind of coins you used to find in your pocket, in your change, sliding around at the bottom of your car. Nothing special, right? But among those billions, a tiny handful were born different. A rare mistake. A hidden error that transformed an everyday penny into a treasure worth up to $1.2 million today. Most people never even noticed. For decades, these pennies passed through hands unnoticed, from grocery store registers, to kids' piggy banks, to dusty old coffee cans. Until one day, a collector spotted something strange. And that one discovery changed everything. The answer lies in the tiniest of details. While the Denver Mint was cranking out coins, the machinery wasn't perfect. Dies cracked. Strikes doubled. Edges came out uneven. And every so often, a flawed penny slipped through. For collectors, those errors aren't mistakes, they're gold mines. But here's where the story takes a turn. One of these Denver pennies surfaced at auction, and what happened next stunned the coin world. Bidding started small, but within minutes the price shot up. Hundreds, thousands, then tens of thousands. And when the final gavel fell, that little brown penny had crossed into the impossible, over $1 million. Because it wasn't just a coin. It was a miracle of survival. A rare 1978 D penny with a doubling on the date, a crisp strike on Lincoln's portrait, and a flaw so unique that experts declared it one of a kind. Dealers were shocked. Collectors couldn't believe it. And suddenly, a penny most people would ignore became a symbol of hope. Proof that treasure really can be hiding in plain sight. Experts believe more are still out there. Sitting in jars, in drawers, even in pockets right now. And most people wouldn't recognize them if they saw one. First, check the mint mark. You need that small D under the date. That's Denver. Next, look carefully at the date itself. If you see doubling in the numbers, especially the 7 or the 8, you may be staring at a fortune. Check Lincoln's face too. Sometimes the doubling shows in his eye or his beard. And don't ignore the edges. Off-center strikes or clipped planchets can multiply the value instantly. Imagine this. You're sorting through an old jar of pennies, bored and ready to dump them at the bank. But then one coin catches your eye. The date looks strange. The mint mark seems slightly off. And when you look closer, your heart races. Could this be the one? That exact scenario has happened before. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. This coin isn't just about money. It's about the thrill of the hunt. The idea that in a world of mass production, flaws are what makes something priceless. That one person, just by paying attention, can uncover a treasure that others miss for 40 years. Think about it. Every 1978 penny you've ever ignored, every dull copper coin you thought was worthless, could secretly hold the power to change your life. And yet most people never look closely enough. Collectors are racing to get their hands on these. Dealers know the market is hungry. Every time one surfaces, the price climbs higher. And if you're lucky enough to spot one, you're not just holding a coin. You're holding history. You're holding a story. You're holding a piece of copper worth more than a house. But here's the part that keeps people awake at night. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. But it shocked the coin world when collectors realized it could be worth over $1 million. Yes, a simple 1954 Dewey penny, the kind most people overlook, the kind tossed into jars, drawers, and forgotten piggy banks, has been discovered to carry a value so extraordinary, it's turning ordinary people into millionaires overnight. But how could a coin made of nothing more than copper, struck decades ago, possibly be worth $1.3 million today? The answer lies in one of the most unbelievable twists of American minting history. The year was 1954. Dwight D. Eisenhower was president. Gas was 22 cents a gallon. And in Denver, the U.S. Mint was operating at full speed, producing hundreds of millions of Lincoln wheat pennies. To most people, it was just another year, another penny. Nothing special. But inside those massive coin presses, deep in the machinery, something went terribly wrong, And that mistake would one day change the lives of a handful of lucky collectors. At first glance, the 1954 Dewey penny looks like any other. Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, wheat stalks on the reverse. But hidden in plain sight are tiny details, microscopic flaws, and minting quirks that separate the million-dollar treasure from the ordinary 1-cent coin. Some were struck with doubled dies, where the details of Lincoln's portrait appear doubled. Others were struck off-center, or on the wrong type of metal planchet. Each error turned an everyday penny into something so rare, collectors would one day fight tooth and nail for it. For decades, nobody realized the significance. These pennies circulated through grocery stores, gas stations, and vending machines, passing from hand to hand as if they were worthless. One man even admitted he had unknowingly spent one at a diner, only to find out years later that he had let a fortune slip through his fingers. Imagine handing over $1 million for a cup of coffee. That's the reality of this story. One by one, rare 1954 Dewey pennies began surfacing. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were rushing to authenticate them. Prices soared into the stratosphere. A coin once dismissed as pocket change suddenly hammered for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then, finally, one specimen pushed the unimaginable barrier, selling for $1.3 million. 1 penny. 1 cent. More than most people will earn in a lifetime. But here's the part most people miss. The reason these coins are worth a fortune isn't just the errors. It's the survival rate. Out of the hundreds of millions minted, only a handful escaped with these exact, life-changing mistakes. Think about that. Millions and millions of pennies, but perhaps only a dozen or two are worth over $1 million. If you have a 1954 Dewey penny, pull it out and examine it carefully. Look for doubling on the date and lettering. Check if Lincoln's portrait looks slightly shifted or blurred. Flip it over. Are the wheat stalks misaligned, faint, or doubled? Even a small off-center strike can mean thousands, and the rarest of these mistakes? That's where the $1 million miracle lies. Collectors who know what to look for are finding these coins in the most unexpected places. Estate sales, old coffee cans, even dusty drawers filled with forgotten change. One woman in Texas discovered hers tucked inside a shoebox her grandfather left behind. She thought it was worthless, until an appraiser told her it was worth more than her house. The market for rare pennies is hotter than ever. Dealers are competing. Auctions are breaking records. And every time another 1954 Dewey penny surfaces, it sends shockwaves through the coin world. People are realizing that what they once ignored could actually be the key to financial freedom. So the next time you come across a 1954 penny with that little D mint mark beneath the date, don't ignore it. Don't spend it. Don't toss it aside. Because hidden in that tiny coin could be the secret to $1 million discovery. Yes, a single 1969 D Lincoln penny, something most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk, has stunned collectors by being worth up to $1.4 million. Imagine holding that kind of fortune between your fingers, hidden in plain sight, disguised as nothing more than ordinary pocket change. But the truth is, this penny isn't ordinary at all. Its story is filled with mistakes, secrets, and a twist of fate that has turned the smallest coin in American currency into one of the most valuable treasures ever discovered. The year was 1969. The United States Mint in Denver was producing millions upon millions of pennies, cranking them out with incredible speed. To most people, these coins were just everyday change, something to toss in a tip jar or feed into a vending machine. But somewhere, in the middle of that massive production, something went wrong. And that mistake is what turned a 1-cent coin into a once-in-a-lifetime $1 million miracle. That's where the story gets fascinating. Some of these 1969 D pennies were struck in such a way that their details came out different than the rest. Some carried rare doubling errors, others had anomalies in the minting process, and a handful, so rare that you could count them on one hand, escaped the mint with imperfections that the human eye barely notices. Yet to collectors, those imperfections mean everything. One collector's story still gives chills. He found a 1969 D penny while sorting through loose change, the kind of routine task nobody thinks twice about. But this coin looked different. Letters seemed slightly off, the design had an unusual quality. He almost dismissed it. Almost. Instead, he sent it to be examined. What came back was shocking. He wasn't holding a penny, he was holding history. The auction results stunned the entire coin world, as bids skyrocketed and the humble 1-cent piece crossed into millionaire territory. Collectors were shocked. Dealers rushed to get their hands on one. And the legend of the 1969 D penny was born. Suddenly, everyone was digging through their drawers, jars, and old collections, praying for that one lucky find. Because this coin, hiding in plain sight, had just rewritten the rules of what pocket change could be worth. It's not just about the year. It's about the details. The 1969 D Lincoln penny that commands massive value often carries subtle signs, rare doubling on the obverse, especially on the date and the word liberty. These double die errors are so sharp, so distinct, that even a casual collector could spot them with the naked eye if they know what to look for. But miss it, and you could throw away a fortune. And what makes it even more mysterious is how few of them exist. Out of the millions of pennies minted in Denver in 1969, only a handful of these era coins survived. Some were destroyed. Some were lost. And some, believe it or not, are still hiding in circulation today, waiting for someone lucky enough, or careful enough, to find them. But what happened next stunned even seasoned numismatists. One 1969 D penny, with the perfect doubling error, was authenticated and sold for a staggering price at auction, fetching nearly $1.4 million. Think about that. A penny, less than the cost of a gumball, suddenly transformed into life-changing wealth. It's the kind of story that makes you question every coin you've ever handled. How many times have you tossed a penny aside without a second thought? How many treasures have slipped through people's fingers, never to be noticed? That's the drama, the thrill, the heartbreak of coin collecting. You never really know until you look closer. So, how do you know if you've got the $1 million version of this coin? Start with the date, 1969, Denver mint mark, the little d, under the year. Then, look closely at the obverse. Do the numbers in the date look doubled? Does the word liberty appear as if it was struck twice? What about "In God We Trust"? Are the letters shadowed, bold, or oddly thick? If so, you could be staring at a fortune. But here's the warning: not every coin with scratches or weird marks is valuable. Counterfeits exist, and plenty of regular 1969 D pennies are worth only a cent. That's why authentication is everything. If you think you've got one, get it graded by a professional coin service. Because if it turns out to be genuine, your life could change overnight. Imagine that moment. You hand over a coin for evaluation, just another penny to most eyes. Then the expert looks up, stunned. They tell you, "Do you realize what you're holding?" And suddenly, that ordinary piece of copper becomes your $1 million ticket. The truth is, the 1969 D Lincoln penny is more than just money, it's a symbol of possibility. It proves that even the smallest, most overlooked things in life can hold unimaginable value. That drawer of change in your kitchen? That jar collecting dust in your garage? Inside could be the miracle you never expected. So the next time you see a penny, don't dismiss it. Look closely. Because this exact coin, the 1969 D Lincoln penny with that rare, remarkable doubling, could be sitting in your pocket right now. And if it is, you're not holding a penny, you're holding more than $1 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash. An ordinary, brown penny from 1956 that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the sidewalk, later stunned the coin world when it was revealed to be worth nearly $1.5 million. That's the mystery of the 1956 wheat penny without a mint mark, a coin so rare, so valuable, and so full of secrets that collectors everywhere are still whispering about it. The year was 1956. America was booming, Elvis Presley was climbing the charts, and the Lincoln penny was everywhere. Millions upon millions were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, with no mint mark at all. They jingled in pockets, bought bubble gum, paid for newspapers, and slowly vanished into piggy banks across the country. Most of those pennies are still only worth face value, but hidden among them are a few that carry a shocking twist. You see, not all 1956 pennies are created equal. Most are just common copper coins, but a few carry hidden errors that transform them from spare change into million-dollar treasures. Doubled dies, repunched mint marks, die cracks, strange little details that only reveal themselves under careful eyes. The kind of mistakes the mint tried to keep quiet, but collectors lived to uncover. One story tells of a man who found his 1956 penny tucked away in a jar of coins passed down from his grandfather. It looked ordinary, darkened with age, nothing special at first glance. But when he examined it under a magnifying glass, he noticed something different. A doubling in the date. A sharp line where none should exist. His heart raced. He took it to an expert, and within weeks, it made headlines. That tiny coin, once thought to be worth a cent, sold for close to $1.5 million. Think about that for a moment. A single penny, smaller than a paperclip, transformed into life-changing wealth. Dealers rushed to find others, collectors scoured through old jars and bank rolls, and whispers of the 1956 wheat penny spread like wildfire. And here's the part that most people miss. The secret is in the details. Look closely at the date. Pay attention to the 1956. Some rare errors show doubling on the numbers. Others reveal unusual die cracks across Lincoln's portrait. The tiniest imperfection can mean the difference between a penny worth a cent and a penny worth $1 million. Collectors were shocked when auction houses began listing these coins at staggering prices. Every time one appeared, the bidding wars were fierce, each collector knowing this was their once-in-a-lifetime chance to own a piece of numismatic legend. Some walked away with their dreams crushed, others, with $1 million miracle in their pocket. But here's where it gets even more dramatic. Many of these pennies are still out there. Not in museums, not locked in display cases, but in people's homes, tucked away in jars, drawers, and forgotten piggy banks. That means you might be holding one without even realizing it. Imagine sorting through your change, thinking nothing of it, when suddenly your eye catches a detail on a 1956 wheat penny. You set it aside. You check again. And then you realize, this could be it. The coin that changes everything. And let's be clear, the 1956 no mint mark penny itself isn't rare. Millions exist. What's rare are the errors. The doubled dies. The misstrikes. The flaws that slip past the mint and into circulation. And that's what makes collectors go wild. That's what makes dealers pay fortunes. That's what turns an everyday penny into $1 million discovery. But here's the warning, most people overlook them. They don't check the date carefully. They don't look for the doubling. They toss it back into circulation, unknowingly passing up a life-changing treasure. And that's why only a few lucky collectors have cashed in on this fortune. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. Another collector's dusty old coin jar turned into the biggest financial windfall of his life. These stories are not myths. They're reminders that history has a funny way of hiding its treasures in plain sight. Simple. Grab your magnifying glass. Examine the 1956 carefully. Watch for double numbers, strange cracks, or any sign the strike is off. Check Lincoln's face for unusual lines or distortions. Don't ignore even the tiniest detail, because that's where the value lives. And remember this. Every time you pick up a penny, every time you glance at the date, you could be staring at a hidden treasure. The next millionaire could be you, because this exact penny, the 1956 wheat no mint mark Lincoln penny, could be sitting in your drawer right now. And it's worth over $1 million. But instead, it became one of the most shocking discoveries in modern coin history. A simple Lincoln penny, the kind you've probably seen thousands of times, secretly hiding a fortune worth up to $1.6 million. The year was 1982. The U.S. Mint was going through a major change. For decades, pennies had been struck in solid copper, heavy and reliable. But in 1982, copper prices skyrocketed. Making a penny out of pure copper actually cost more than 1 cent to produce. So the government made a bold move, switching the penny's composition from mostly copper to mostly zinc, coated with a thin layer of copper. To the naked eye, it looked the same. But this change set the stage for one of the most valuable error coins in American history. Here's where the story takes a dramatic twist. During that chaotic transition year, the mint struck pennies in two different compositions, 95% copper and the new copper-plated zinc. On top of that, several different dyes and design varieties were in use. Mistakes were bound to happen, and one particular mistake created a coin so rare that collectors today are willing to pay millions just to own it. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. A few sharp-eyed collectors noticed that some 1982 pennies looked and weighed differently than others. Some were heavy, the old copper. Some were light, the new zinc. And hidden among them, struck at the Denver Mint with the D Mint mark, was a version that wasn't supposed to exist at all. A 1982 D small date penny struck in copper. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. You see, the small date design has a different shape to the 2 in 1982. It's subtle. Most people would never notice it unless they knew exactly what to look for. Combine that with the fact it was struck in copper when it should have been zinc, and suddenly you have a one-of-a-kind rarity. Dealers were shocked when the first discovery was confirmed. A coin that looked completely ordinary, something you might get back in change at the grocery store, was suddenly worth more than gold by weight, more than diamonds by carat. Its value didn't come from the metal inside, but from the story it told. A story of a mistake, a mystery, and a miracle hiding in plain sight. Collectors rushed to their jars, drawers, and boxes of old pennies. Imagine the thrill of holding a coin worth over $1 million in your hand, knowing that it came from the same change countless people had ignored for decades. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, and here's where it gets even more unbelievable. For years, experts debated whether this coin was real, or just a rumor passed around by hopeful collectors. But then, at auction, one of these elusive 1982 D small date copper pennies surfaced. It sold for a jaw-dropping sum, over $1 million. And that sale confirmed once and for all that this wasn't just a myth. It was real, but what happened after that only fueled the legend. Every time one of these coins appears, it sends shockwaves through the hobby. Collectors whisper, dealers speculate, and everyday people start searching through jars of pennies long forgotten in basements and attics. Could it be hiding in your change? Could the penny sitting in your kitchen drawer be worth $1.6 million? First, check the year. It must be 1982. Second, look for the mint mark. If it has a tiny D under the date, that means it was struck in Denver. Third, pay close attention to the shape of the numbers. The small date variety has a delicate 2. The top curve is sharply defined and doesn't droop like the large date. Finally, and most importantly, weigh the coin. If it weighs about 3.1 grams, you've got copper. If it weighs around 2.5 grams, it's zinc. The $1 million coin is the 1982 D small date copper penny weighing 3.1 grams. Collectors were stunned when the criteria were revealed. A simple kitchen scale could be the difference between an ordinary penny and $1 million discovery. And yet, most people miss it because they never bother to look closely. How many times have you tossed pennies aside, never giving them a second glance? How many drawers, jars, or coffee cans are sitting in American homes right now, filled with forgotten change? Somewhere out there, another one of these 1982 D copper small date pennies could be waiting to be discovered. This is where the dream becomes reality. Collectors and dealers are willing to pay staggering sums for this coin because of its rarity and historical importance. It represents a mistake that should never have happened, and yet somehow it did. And that mistake transformed a 1-cent coin into a life-changing fortune. One collector once said, "Finding a coin like this is like winning the lottery, except the odds are in your pocket change." And that's exactly what makes this story so inspiring. Unlike lottery tickets, you don't have to spend money to play this game. All you have to do is pay attention. So now, the question is, will you check your pennies? Will you take the time to look closely at the coins most people ignore? Or will you let the chance slip away, never knowing if you had a fortune sitting right in front of you? The year was 1953. Eisenhower was president, gas was just 22 cents a gallon, and the U.S. Mint was striking billions of Lincoln wheat pennies. To most Americans, these were just everyday coins, tossed into jars, slipped into piggy banks, or spent without a second thought. But hidden among those ordinary brown cents was one coin so rare, so mysterious, that today it's valued at up to $1.7 million. How could a simple copper penny be worth more than a mansion? The answer lies in a shocking twist of history. You see, the 1953 wheat penny with no mint mark was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Millions were made. But a small handful came out with minting errors so bizarre, so subtle, that most people never even noticed. Misaligned dies, doubled lettering, strange lamination flaws, quirks that turned a 1-cent coin into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. For decades, these coins went unnoticed. They passed through grocery store registers, jingled in pockets, and sat for years in old glass jars. No one had any idea that what they were holding could one day pay off their mortgage, or change their life forever. One of these elusive 1953 wheat pennies showed up at auction. Collectors from all over the country gathered, curious but skeptical. When the final gavel fell, jaws dropped. This tiny copper coin sold for nearly $1 million. Dealers were stunned. Collectors were whispering in disbelief. And suddenly, the humble wheat penny was making front-page news. Why? Because it wasn't just a coin. It was a story, a piece of history forged in copper, carrying secrets that only the sharpest eyes could spot. And once the story broke, everyone wanted one. Imagine this. One man finds a penny in an old coffee tin, saved by his grandfather. He almost spends it at a gas station, but something catches his eye. The lettering looks slightly off, the strike feels strange. He gets it checked. And what he learns changes his life. That ordinary-looking penny was one of the rarest examples known, and its value? Over $1 million. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on one. And everyday Americans began searching through old drawers and dusty coin albums, hoping for their own $1 million miracle. But here's the twist most people miss. Not every 1953 wheat penny is valuable. In fact, the majority are worth just a few cents. So what makes the difference? It comes down to the details. Look for a 1953 wheat penny with no mint mark, meaning it was struck in Philadelphia. Then study the coin carefully. Does the date look doubled? Is the Liberty inscription slightly off? Do the wheat stalks on the reverse look unusually sharp, or strangely weak? These tiny imperfections are exactly what drives collectors wild, and condition matters. A coin that's been in circulation, scratched and worn, might fetch a few dollars. But one that survived in pristine condition, with bright luster and minimal marks, that's the coin that commands 6 or even 7 figures. But wait, here's the real kicker. Some 1953 wheat pennies were struck on the wrong type of metal planchet altogether. Imagine a copper penny struck on a leftover silver dime blank, or an off-metal planchet that was never meant to exist. Those are the kinds of minting mistakes that turn a penny into $1 million marvel. Think about it. Something so small, something so ordinary, something you might overlook at the bottom of a drawer, could secretly be worth more than your car, more than your house, more than most people make in years. That's the magic of the 1953 wheat penny with no mint mark, and here's where it gets even more thrilling. Most of these rare pennies aren't locked away in museums. They're still out there. In jars. In boxes. In collections passed down from parents and grandparents. They're hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone with sharp eyes and a little bit of knowledge to uncover them. So next time you're sifting through change, take a closer look. That brown penny that everyone else ignores might just be your ticket to financial freedom. Imagine holding a coin no bigger than your thumbnail, knowing it could sell for up to $1.7 million. Collectors call it the ultimate discovery. Dealers call it the holy grail of wheat pennies. But to the person who finds it, it's something even more powerful. It's a life-changing miracle hiding in plain sight. A 1953 wheat penny, no mint mark, struck in Philadelphia. Examine the details carefully. Doubling on the date or lettering, strange metal surfaces, crisp wheat stalks, or unusual flaws that don't belong. Get it graded if you suspect something rare. Because one mistake people make is selling too fast, without realizing just how valuable their coin might be. And now comes the most powerful truth of all. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. It was just an ordinary-looking 1980 Lincoln penny. Most people who saw it never even gave it a second thought. It looked like pocket change, just another copper coin mixed in with nickels, dimes, and loose quarters. But underneath that worn copper surface was a mystery so rare that it would change one collector's life forever. The year was 1980. America was going through inflation, gas lines, and the Cold War was still casting its shadow. The penny was hardly worth bending over to pick up. But in the minting presses of Philadelphia, something unexpected happened. A small mistake, invisible to the average person, created one of the most valuable pennies ever known. Now here's where it gets fascinating. Every US coin is supposed to have a tiny letter stamped somewhere, a mint mark, showing where it was made. But this particular 1980 penny had no mint mark at all. At first glance, you'd think that's normal. After all, many pennies were made without mint marks. But this one was different. Collectors were shocked when they realized what they were holding. It wasn't just missing a mint mark, it had strange die varieties, unique errors, and an incredibly sharp strike that separated it from the billions of other 1980 cents. Suddenly, a coin worth 1 cent was now being whispered about in hushed tones across the coin world. But what happened next stunned everyone. One of these pennies showed up at auction. The bidding started modestly. Dealers shrugged, thinking it might bring in a few $100s. But the room grew tense. Bids climbed higher and higher. $1,000, $10,000, then into the six figures. By the time the hammer fell, the final price had soared into the millions. And here's the part that keeps collectors awake at night. Nobody knows exactly how many of these 1980 no mint mark errors are still out there. Some believe only a handful survived the minting process. Others think they could still be hiding, tucked away in old jars, forgotten in attics, or buried in the bottom of a dresser drawer. Imagine this for a moment. You're rolling up coins to cash in at the bank. You pick up a 1980 penny, and just as you're about to toss it aside, you notice something strange. No mint mark. No sign of the little letter that should be there. Could it be the one? Could you be holding a fortune in your hands without even realizing it? Collectors rushed to study every detail of these pennies. The lettering, the edges, the strike, tiny imperfections told the story of why they were different. And that story is what made them worth not hundreds, not thousands, but up to $1.8 million. But here's where the suspense deepens. Many people confuse ordinary no-mint mark pennies with this legendary error. Thousands of 1980 pennies were minted in Philadelphia without any mint mark at all, and those are only worth face value. So how can you tell the difference? The secret lies in the details. The genuine $1 million coin has unique die characteristics, sharper lettering, slightly off alignment, and in some cases, a striking error in the date itself. These are details so subtle that most people miss them. But those who know what to look for are the ones who strike it rich. And yet, every so often, another story surfaces. A man in the Midwest finds one in a jar of pennies that had been sitting in his garage for decades. A woman sorting through her late father's coin collection stumbles across one by accident. Each time, the discovery shakes the coin world, reminding us that even in the most ordinary places, life-changing treasure can still be hiding. Think about that. Right now, in your home, in your pocket, in a jar of loose change sitting on your nightstand, there could be a penny that turns into the biggest financial surprise of your life. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin. Collectors are obsessing over it. And yet, millions of people walk past it every day, unaware of its true value. So, if you want to know exactly how to spot it, here's what you need to do. Take out every 1980 penny you own. Look carefully at the area just below the date. If there's no mint mark, you're already on the right track. Then, study the strike. Is the lettering unusually sharp? Does the date look slightly off? Compare it against ordinary 1980 cents. The difference is there, but only if you're patient enough to see it. Avoid the biggest mistake most people make, assuming that all no-mint mark pennies are the same. They're not. 99% are worth just 1 cent. But the rarest one, the one with the hidden error, is worth millions. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. It's worth nearly $2 million. Imagine digging through your pocket change and tossing aside what looks like an ordinary penny, only to discover later that you threw away a fortune. That's exactly the kind of hidden treasure we're about to uncover. The 1971 Lincoln penny. A coin so common that most people never even glance at it. But behind one specific version of this penny lies a story of mystery, accident, and life-changing wealth. It may look just like the coins you've had jingling in your pockets for decades, but one tiny detail, a missing mint mark, has turned it into $1 million miracle. Back in 1971, the U.S. Mint was under immense pressure. Billions of coins had to be produced to keep up with America's booming economy. Mistakes were bound to happen. And in the chaos of production, a handful of pennies slipped through without the tiny mint mark that should have been stamped beneath the date. To the naked eye, these coins seemed ordinary, but to collectors, they were about to become legendary. One of these rare 1971 no-mint mark pennies surfaced at an auction years later. The bidding started quietly, as if no one realized what was about to happen. But then, the room caught fire. Bidders raised their paddles faster and faster. Prices shot up. Gasps filled the room. Collectors couldn't believe what they were seeing. By the time the gavel fell, this small copper coin had sold for more than $1 million. And it didn't stop there. As awareness spread, the market value climbed even higher. Today, some of these elusive pennies are valued at up to $1.8 million. It all comes down to rarity. The U.S. Mint produced hundreds of millions of pennies in 1971. Almost all of them had mint marks, whether from Denver or San Francisco. But these rare few with no mint mark, they weren't supposed to exist. That tiny absence tells the entire story. It's the fingerprint of a mistake that changed the lives of the collectors lucky enough to spot it. Collectors were shocked. Dealers scrambled. Suddenly, an ordinary-looking penny most people ignored was commanding prices usually reserved for gold bars and fine art. One man discovered his in an old coffee can filled with spare change, a coin he'd kept for decades without knowing its worth. Another collector pulled one out of a roll of pennies purchased from the bank for just 50 cents. Stories like these ignited a frenzy across the coin world. Everyone wanted to know, could there be more of these hidden treasures waiting to be found? And here's where things get even more unbelievable. Many 1971 pennies have been lost to time. Melted down, damaged, or simply forgotten in drawers. That means the ones that do survive are becoming rarer every single year. Every time a collector uncovers one, the coin world holds its breath. Will it be pristine? Will it shatter another auction record? But what happened next stunned the entire collecting community. A near-perfect example of the 1971 no-mint mark penny showed up, and experts were speechless. Its flawless condition, combined with the already rare minting error, pushed its value sky high. That single penny was valued at $1.8 million. A piece of pocket change, worth more than most houses. The secret is right under your nose. Take a look at the date on your penny, 1971. Now, check just beneath the numbers. Do you see a small letter, a mint mark like D for Denver or S for San Francisco? If you do, it's not the rare one. But if your penny has no letter at all, no mint mark where there should be one, you might be staring at a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Be careful, though. Many coins wear down over time, and mint marks can fade with age. That's why authentication is everything. Professional grading services can confirm whether your penny is the genuine error coin or just an ordinary cent. Don't take chances with something that could change your life. Think about it. Right now, sitting in an old jar, a shoebox, or even in your pocket, could be a penny that turns your world upside down. A penny that looks ordinary to everyone else, but to the trained eye, it's worth more than $1 million. And here's the truth, most people will never know. They'll spend it, lose it, or ignore it. But for those who do pay attention, for the collectors who take the time to look closer, the reward could be staggering. One tiny copper coin, one missing mark, one moment of attention. That's all it takes to uncover a fortune. So the next time you empty your pockets, don't just toss those pennies aside. Inspect them. Study them. Because hidden in the simplest of places could be the rarest of treasures. The 1971 no mint mark Lincoln penny is proof that miracles can be small, round, and copper-colored. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. But sold for over $1 million. Yes, a simple copper penny. The kind you might toss into a jar, or lose under your car seat. A penny so ordinary that most people never even noticed it. Until one collector uncovered its shocking secret, and the entire coin world was left speechless. The year was 1976. America was celebrating its bicentennial. Fireworks filled the skies, parades marched through the streets, and the nation was obsessed with special commemorative coins. But hidden among the flood of bicentennial quarters, half dollars, and dollar coins, something extraordinary happened at the Denver Mint. A penny was struck with a detail so rare, so unusual, that decades later it would shake the market and stun collectors everywhere. At first glance, it looked like any other 1976 Lincoln penny. Copper red, with Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile and the tiny D mint mark beneath the date. Billions of them were minted. Billions. So why would one be worth over $1.1 million? That's where the story takes a shocking turn. What happened next stunned the entire coin world. One of these pennies was found carrying a minting flaw so subtle, most people would miss it with the naked eye. It wasn't just a scratch, not just wear and tear. It was a true mint error, a strike that should have never left the mint. And that tiny flaw transformed this penny from pocket change into a priceless treasure. Collectors were shocked when it first surfaced at auction. Dealers whispered about it in hushed tones. Nobody expected a coin from the 1970s, a coin from their childhood, to break the $1 million barrier. After all, rare coins are supposed to be ancient, or silver, or gold. Not a penny most of us grew up spending at the corner store. And yet here it was. Imagine holding that penny in your hand. You'd probably think nothing of it. Maybe you'd spend it on a piece of candy. Maybe you'd drop it in a fountain and make a wish. But one man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. And here's the part that keeps collectors up at night. There's no guarantee only one exists. For every dramatic auction story, for every newspaper headline about a coin worth a fortune, there could be dozens more still out there. Sitting in dusty coffee cans. Hidden in drawers. Tucked away in forgotten piggy banks. But the secret is in the details. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The 1976 penny to watch for has crisp, sharp lettering, no signs of wear, and in some cases, a dramatic minting flaw like a doubled die or off-center strike. Condition is everything. A heavily circulated penny might be worth a few cents. But in pristine condition, with the right error? That's where the value explodes into the hundreds of thousands, and for the rarest of the rare, over $1 million. Collectors are rushing to get their hands on this coin. Dealers are scanning through rolls of pennies from the bank. Treasure hunters are scouring estate sales, flea markets, and garage sales. Because finding one could change your life overnight. But here's the twist. Most people ignore pennies. They don't even bend down to pick one up off the ground anymore. And that's exactly why this story is so unbelievable. The coin everyone overlooked turned out to be the one worth the most. One collector shared a story that sounded almost too crazy to believe. He had an old coffee jar full of pennies sitting in his garage for years. One day, while cleaning, he decided to go through it, just for fun. He spotted a shiny 1976 Lincoln penny that looked a little different. He thought maybe it was just a light, but when he had it graded, the results floored him. His penny was one of the rarest known examples. That single discovery turned a dusty jar of change into a seven-figure payday. Could you be sitting on the same miracle? The truth is, you just might. And here's exactly what to look for. Pull out any 1976 Lincoln pennies you have. Check for the D mint mark under the date. Look closely for sharp details, unusual doubling, or any signs that the strike is slightly off. And most importantly, pay attention to the condition. A penny with no scratches, no discoloration, no damage, the kind that looks almost untouched, could be worth a small fortune. Don't make the mistake of assuming only silver coins or ancient relics carry value. Modern pennies, even from the 1970s, are creating millionaires. The 1970-60 Lincoln penny is proof of that. So the next time you see a penny, don't ignore it. Don't let it slip through your fingers. That little coin could hold a secret that changes your life forever. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. Imagine holding a penny so ordinary, so common, that most people wouldn't even bother to pick it up if they saw it lying on the sidewalk. And yet, that same coin, a 1961 Lincoln penny, has shocked collectors by reaching values as high as $1.2 million. Yes, a single copper coin from your pocket change could hold the power to change your life forever. To answer that, we need to go back in time, to the year 1961. John F. Kennedy was president. Gasoline cost just 31 cents a gallon. And at the Denver Mint, tucked away in the shadows of Colorado's mountains, millions of Lincoln pennies were struck, each carrying that tiny D mint mark just below the date. Almost all of them were nothing special. Almost all of them would be spent, lost, or forgotten. But hidden among them was a secret point. One coin left the presses different. Unique. Flawed, perhaps, but in the world of coin collecting, what some call mistakes, others call miracles, collectors began whispering about it years later. A penny that looked just like the rest, but under closer inspection, carried the faint signs of a striking error so rare, it could turn ordinary copper into $1 million masterpiece. But here's the twist. The 1961 penny doesn't scream its value. You could hold it in your hand right now and never know you're looking at a life-changing piece of history. And that's exactly why dealers are rushing to check every single example they come across. At a major auction, when a pristine, uncirculated 1961 penny with flawless detail crossed the block, bidders erupted. The price climbed higher and higher. What started as a coin worth a single cent ended as a jaw-dropping treasure, selling for hundreds of thousands. And in the rarest, most pristine condition, with the perfect storm of rarity, demand, and condition, experts believe this coin can command as much as $1.2 million. The answer lies in the details. Look closely at the date. On some examples, you'll see faint doubling, a doubling of the 9, the 6, or even the 1. This error, called a doubled die, transforms an ordinary penny into a collector's obsession. Combine that with sharp mint-state condition, that bright copper luster untouched by circulation, and you have one of the most coveted coins of the early 1960s. Most people don't know that tiny imperfections, invisible to the naked eye, can multiply a coin's value by thousands. A scratch? Value gone. A tiny spot of wear on Lincoln's cheek? Forget it. But if you find one in pristine mint state, the kind that looks like it was just struck yesterday, you're holding a golden ticket. Dealers are scouring shows, online auctions, and private collections, desperate to uncover these rarities before the secret gets out. Because once word spreads, the rush will be unstoppable. And the story doesn't end there. Imagine a man cleaning out his father's old coin jar, ready to cash it in at the bank. Dozens of pennies from the 50s, 60s, and 70s jingling around. He almost dumped the whole jar without a second glance, but one coin caught his eye. The shine looked different. He set it aside. That coin? A 1961 Lincoln penny in near-perfect condition. Appraised at hundreds of thousands. One careless moment, and it could have been gone forever. This is why collectors are obsessed. Because the next $1 million penny could be hiding in your pocket right now. First, check the date, 1961, with the small D mint mark right below. Second, examine the numbers carefully. Any sign of doubling, especially on the 1 or the 9, makes it instantly more valuable. Third, condition is everything. The fewer scratches, the brighter the shine, the sharper the details, the higher the price climbs. And here's the part most people miss: many coins from this era were poorly struck, leaving weak details. But if you find one where Lincoln's hair, his beard, and even the tiny lettering are razor sharp, you might be staring at a seven-figure treasure. Collectors have a saying: rarity creates value, but condition multiplies it. And nowhere is that more true than with the 1961 D Lincoln penny. So the next time you come across a jar of old coins, don't just cash them in. Don't just toss them aside. Look closely. Because hidden among the ordinary could be the extraordinary. A penny so powerful it could change your life in an instant. That's right. A simple 1948 wheat penny with no mint mark, a coin most people would never look at twice, has shocked collectors, stunned dealers, and rewritten the story of what's possible when it comes to Lincoln cents. The year was 1948. The United States was rebuilding after World War II. Gas was just 16 cents a gallon, Harry Truman was president, and in the middle of all that history, the U.S. Mint quietly struck the Lincoln wheat penny. Billions were produced. Billions scattered into circulation, lost in couch cushions, tossed into piggy banks. The secret lies in the smallest details. And it's these details that so many people miss. You see, the Philadelphia Mint, which struck the no mint mark 1948 penny, had an unusual year. The dies used to create these coins were heavily worn. Some were polished, some were repunched, some left faint errors that collectors today call ghost strikes. And once in a while, these imperfections created a coin unlike any other. Collectors were shocked when one of these pennies, perfectly preserved in mint state condition, crossed the auction block and sold for a staggering sum. What stunned the coin world was not just the condition, but the story of how it was found. A man in the Midwest had been saving change from his grocery store register since the 1950s. Decades later, he sat down to roll them up for the bank. Buried among thousands of ordinary wheat cents was a flawless 1948 no mint mark Lincoln penny. He almost spent it. Almost tossed it away. Instead, he sent it to be graded. When the results came back, his hands shook. The coin was nearly perfect, one of the finest examples known, and its value soared into the hundreds of thousands, eventually pushing its way toward that unbelievable $1 million mark. As word spread, collectors began rechecking their old wheat penny hoards. Dealers rushed to auctions, desperate to find high-grade 1948s before the prices exploded further. And explode they did. A coin most believed was common and ordinary had become a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, a coin capable of turning pocket change into a fortune. The difference between a penny worth just a cent and one worth over $1 million can come down to a single tiny detail. The sharpness of Lincoln's hair. The clarity of the wheat stalks on the reverse. Even a faint doubling on the date or letters. These small imperfections, invisible to the casual eye, are the very reasons collectors are paying staggering sums today. I've handled thousands of 1948 pennies, and I let one slip through my fingers without realizing what I had. It cost me a fortune. Think about that for a moment. One coin, hiding in plain sight, worth enough to buy a house, a car, and still leave you with money to spare. The majority of 1948 wheat pennies are worth only a few cents. Even in circulated condition, they're common. But in mint state, untouched, with blazing red color, the story changes entirely. These are the coins that sell for life-changing sums. These are the coins that can hit the $1 million threshold. And if that weren't enough, some rare varieties and errors from 1948 are still out there, waiting to be found. Off-center strikes. Repunched mint marks. Die cracks that snake across Lincoln's face like lightning bolts. Each of these errors can send the value skyrocketing. Collectors were stunned when a single penny with a dramatic die crack sold for over $10,000. Imagine what the finest, most flawless 1948 penny could fetch at auction. That's how we arrive at the staggering figure of $1.3 million. First, check the date, 1948, with no mint mark under it. That means it was struck in Philadelphia. Next, look at the overall condition. If it's bright, red, and shiny, with no visible wear, you could be holding something extraordinary. Pay close attention to Lincoln's hair and the wheat ears on the back. The sharper the detail, the higher the value. Finally, Don't ignore even small imperfections. A double date, extra thickness in the letters, or an off-center design could mean the difference between pocket change and a life-changing discovery. Think about it. Right now, sitting in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten roll of coins in your home, you could have the very penny collectors are fighting for. A penny worth over $1 million. This is why collectors never stop searching. Why they examine every cent, every detail, every coin that crosses their path. Because the next great discovery isn't locked in a vault or hidden in a museum. It could be sitting in your hands right now. So check your change. Look closely at your wheat pennies. Because the 1948 no-mint mark Lincoln cent is more than just a coin, it's a key to history, a symbol of luck, and maybe, just maybe, your ticket to $1 million future. And if you found this story inspiring, make sure you subscribe for more secrets about coins worth money. Because you never know which one of these tiny copper treasures could change your life forever. But instead, it became one of the most valuable coins in American history. A simple 1941 wheat penny without a mint mark, something you'd expect to be worth just a cent, has shocked the world with a value soaring as high as $1.4 million. And the most incredible part? You might already have one sitting in your pocket or tucked away in an old box. The story of the 1941 wheat penny begins in an America preparing for war. Factories buzzed with production, the country was recovering from the Great Depression, and the U.S. Mint was striking coins by the billions. At first glance, there was nothing remarkable about the penny of that year. Abraham Lincoln's face stared out from the obverse, the familiar wheat stalks framed the reverse. It was ordinary, unassuming. But hidden among the countless pennies struck that year, something went wrong, and those errors created one of the rarest treasures in the coin collecting world. Collectors were stunned when a handful of 1941 no-mint mark wheat pennies began turning up at auctions. On the surface, they looked like any other copper coin. But under magnification, the truth emerged: small but shocking anomalies, doubled lettering, striking errors, misalignments. The kind of mistakes that should never have left the mint. These flaws transformed the coin from pocket change into a miracle worth more than $1 million. And here's where the story becomes unbelievable. One of these pennies was reportedly discovered in the most unexpected place, inside a coffee tin of old change kept by a man who had been saving coins for decades. He nearly spent it without a second thought, until a sharp-eyed collector spotted the details. That single coin went on to sell for more than most people's homes. One man's forgotten pocket change became $1 million miracle. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. As word spread, dealers and collectors rushed to examine their 1941 pennies. Thousands of ordinary coins were checked. People pulled out their childhood jars of wheat cents, hoping lightning would strike twice. And in some cases it did. More rare variations of the 1941 no-mint mark penny surfaced, sending values climbing higher and higher. Suddenly, this once ignored coin had become a legend. The answer lies in a combination of history, rarity, and error. During the minting process, some dies were overused, resulting in doubled images on the words, "In God We Trust," or "Liberty." Others showed faint but noticeable die cracks, or unusual surface textures caused by improper striking pressure. To the average eye, these details look like small imperfections. But to seasoned collectors, they are the marks of a once-in-a-lifetime rarity. And when two or more of these errors appear together on the same coin, the value skyrockets. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. A faint doubling of Lincoln's eye. A slight misalignment on the reverse lettering. Even the thickness of the rim can separate a penny worth 1 cent from a penny worth $1 million. Imagine the emotions of the collectors who uncovered these gems. Shock. Disbelief. Excitement. Dealers at auction houses have described the atmosphere as electric when a 1941 penny of this caliber hits the block. Bidders battle fiercely, driving the price higher and higher. At one famous sale, when the final hammer dropped, the room erupted in applause. A coin that could have been lost forever had just changed someone's life. And it's not just about money, it's about history. Each of these pennies carries with it the story of wartime America, of minting mistakes that slipped past unnoticed, of decades where the coin traveled from hand to hand until destiny placed it in the right collector's palm. This is what makes numismatics magical, the blending of history, mystery, and fortune all in something as small as a penny. But here's the twist. Most people walk past this treasure every single day. They empty their pockets, toss coins into tip jars, roll them up for the bank, never realizing that among the pile, a fortune could be hiding. It's the kind of irony that makes collectors lose sleep at night. Somewhere, right now, $1 million penny might be waiting in a drawer, a piggy bank, or even in a kid's coin collection. So how do you know if your 1941 wheat penny is one of these life-changing rarities? First, check if it has no mint mark, no tiny D for Denver or S for San Francisco beneath the date. That means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Next, look closely at the words Liberty and In God We Trust. If you notice any doubling, blurring, or unusual thickness in the letters, you may be holding a treasure. Examine Lincoln's eye carefully. Any sign of doubling there can mean you've struck gold. And don't forget the reverse. The wheat stalks, the words 1 cent, and United States of America. All can reveal striking anomalies. One more thing, condition matters. A coin that looks crisp, with little wear, will always command the highest price. But even well-circulated examples with visible errors can be worth an astounding amount. Imagine pulling out an old, scratched penny and learning it's worth 6 or 7 figures. That is the dream every collector lives for. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin. Collectors are scouring their change. And you? You might be sitting on the very penny that could change your life. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up in the trash, but instead, it sold for nearly $1 million. And here's the shocking truth, it was just a 1958 Lincoln penny. Yes, the same kind of coin you've probably tossed into a change jar without a second thought. But this one tiny penny, minted in Denver back in 1958, has stunned collectors, auction houses, and everyday Americans because of one unbelievable fact. It's worth up to $1.5 million. Now, before you say, "Come on, it's just a penny," let me take you back to the late 1950s. Dwight Eisenhower was president. Alaska and Hawaii had just joined the Union. And in Denver, the U.S. Mint was cranking out Lincoln wheat pennies by the hundreds of millions. Ordinary coins. Everyday money. Nothing special, or so everyone thought. But hidden in that massive production run, a few coins slipped through that defied the rules of the mint. A mistake. A rarity. A miracle, and this is where the legend of the 1958 wheat penny begins. Collectors were shocked when the first one surfaced. It wasn't just rare, it was one of the rarest modern pennies ever found. The details were subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye. But that's exactly what makes it so dangerous to overlook. You could hold one in your hand and never realize you're holding a fortune. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. At an elite auction, one of these pennies crossed the block. The bidding was fierce, coin dealers and investors going head to head, because they knew exactly what was at stake. And when the gavel fell, this humble little coin, the same size, the same copper color as every other penny in your pocket, had sold for over $1 million. One tiny coin. Life-changing money. The answer lies in minting mistakes. Most pennies from 1958 are completely ordinary. They're worth face value, maybe a few cents more if they're in pristine condition. But a small number were struck with unusual errors, doubled dies, misaligned strikes, and anomalies so rare that only a handful have ever been confirmed. One collector described it as lightning in a bottle. Another said, "It's the kind of coin you spend your whole career searching for and never find." And here's where it gets even more interesting. The Denver Mint was notorious for catching mistakes early, pulling flawed coins before they reached circulation. That's why so few of these 1958 errors exist today. The ones that escaped? They're ghosts in the coin world. Shadows. Hidden treasures waiting to be uncovered in an old coffee can, a dusty coin jar, or a forgotten shoebox in the attic. One man bought a bag of old wheat pennies at a flea market for less than $10. Nothing special, just a bulk deal. But buried in that pile of ordinary change was the discovery of a lifetime. A 1958 D penny with an ultra-rare doubling error. That coin later shocked the market when it brought in nearly $1.5 million. One man's pocket change became a millionaire's miracle. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these coins. Collectors are desperate to add them to their vaults. Why? Because the 1958 Dewey penny is more than just a piece of money. It's history. It's mystery. It's a once-in-a-generation treasure that proves even the most ordinary things in life can hide extraordinary secrets. But here's the part you need to hear. You could be sitting on one of these pennies right now. That's not an exaggeration. Millions of 1958 Dewey pennies were minted, and while most are only worth a cent, the rare era coins are worth fortunes. The difference between a worthless penny and $1 million payday comes down to one tiny detail. Start by looking at the date. If you have a 1958 penny with a D mint mark under the year, you're on the right track. Now, here's the crucial part. Look closely at the lettering on the front. On rare era versions, especially the double die variety, the word Liberty and the motto "In God We Trust" show signs of doubling. The letters look shadowed, almost like they've been stamped twice. To the naked eye it might seem like nothing, but under magnification, it's the difference between pocket change and $1 million. Another detail to check is the condition. Coins graded in pristine, mint state, condition, sharp edges, no scratches, no wear, are worth dramatically more than those that have been circulated. Some collectors have walked away with six figures just for a clean, well-preserved 1958 D, even without an error. They assume every old penny is valuable just because it's old. That's not true. Age alone doesn't make a coin worth millions. It's rarity, condition, and minting mistakes that turn copper into gold. That's why the 1958 D penny is so powerful. It checks every box. It's rare, it's mysterious, and it has a track record of selling for life-changing money. Think about it. Right now, in a desk drawer, a piggy bank, or a dusty jar in someone's garage, there could be a penny sitting quietly, waiting to shock the world again. And maybe, just maybe, it's in your house. Collectors dream of finding this coin not just because of the money, but because of the story. Imagine being able to say, "This penny almost got spent on a cup of coffee, but instead, it changed my life forever." That's the kind of story you don't just tell, you pass it down through generations. So here's my advice. Tonight, grab that old coin jar. Dig through those pennies. Pull out every 1958 D you find. Get a magnifying glass. Look at the details. Because the truth is simple, the difference between a 1-cent coin and $1 million treasure is right there, staring you in the face. You just have to notice it. This penny almost vanished into history, tossed aside as just another copper coin from the 1930s. But one collector's discovery shocked the world, because this ordinary-looking 1936 wheat penny with no mint mark sold for more than $1 million. Think about that for a second. A single cent, something most of us wouldn't even bother to pick up off the sidewalk, became a life-changing fortune. And the story behind this penny is even stranger than you can imagine. The year was 1936. Franklin D. Roosevelt was president, the Great Depression still lingered, and the U.S. Mint was churning out pennies by the hundreds of millions. Most of them were common, plain, forgettable. But hidden among those millions, a tiny handful were struck with something unusual. Something the Mint never meant to release. Collectors believe it all started with subtle errors on the dies, the steel tools used to stamp each coin. A few pennies from Philadelphia, with no mint mark, were struck just slightly different from the rest. Some show doubling in the words, "In God We Trust." Others carry a faint but visible doubling on the date, 1936. And in coin collecting, that small doubling makes all the difference. Because when one of those pennies appeared at auction, it didn't sell for a few hundred. It didn't even sell for a few thousand. It soared. Collectors battled. Dealers raised their paddles higher and higher. And when the dust settled, A simple 1-cent coin had shattered expectations, reaching into the $1 million range. But here's the twist. Not all 1936 pennies are valuable. Most are worth just a few cents. That's the danger. People glance too quickly and miss the hidden treasure. They empty their drawers, roll their coins, and never realize what slipped through their fingers. One man nearly made that mistake. His story is legendary in coin collecting circles. He found a 1936 penny in a jar his grandfather left behind. It looked ordinary, brown with age. He almost spent it at a gas station. But something told him to hold on. He showed it to a local dealer, who leaned in with a magnifying glass. Within seconds, the dealer froze. His face turned pale. That ordinary penny was one of the rare double die strikes, and it was later certified and sold for over $1 million. And the drama doesn't end there. Dealers are still hunting for these 1936 varieties. Auction houses whisper about private sales. Collectors lose sleep wondering if the next one is still out there, hiding in someone's change jar. Some experts even say the most pristine examples could push as high as $1.6 million today. But here's where you come in. Because this exact penny could be sitting in your house right now. First, look for the date, 1936, with no mint mark under it. If you see a little D or S, that's not the one. It must be from the Philadelphia Mint, which left no mint mark at all. Second, study the words, "In God We Trust," and the date, 1936. If the letters look doubled, thicker, or shadowed, you may be holding a double die strike. Finally, check the condition. A bright, well-preserved coin can multiply the value by hundreds of thousands. Many fakes exist. Scammers try to alter ordinary 1936 pennies. That's why certification is key. If you ever think you've found one, don't rush to sell it on eBay for a quick buck. Get it authenticated by a professional grading service. That one step could be the difference between $20 and $1 million. Now ask yourself, how many pennies have you tossed into a jar, never thinking twice? How many times have you said, "It's just a penny"? Every coin has a story, and sometimes that story ends in a life-changing discovery. This 1936 wheat penny with no mint mark is living proof. It's the kind of find that makes collectors' hearts race, that turns skeptics into believers, and that could turn your spare change into a fortune. But when the truth came out, it stunned the entire coin world. A simple 1937 Lincoln wheat penny, the kind you could easily overlook in your change jar, has been valued at up to $1.7 million. In 1937, America was still clawing its way out of the Great Depression. Money was scarce, people were struggling, and yet the U.S. Mint was quietly producing millions of Lincoln cents. To the average person, it was just a penny, 1 cent to buy a piece of candy, or to toss into a jar without a second thought. But hidden among those countless coins, something remarkable slipped through the cracks. This wasn't just any penny. The 1937 no mint mark wheat cent, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, would go on to become one of the most sought-after treasures in American numismatics. And here's the chilling part. Most people who had one probably spent it, never realizing they were holding a $1 million miracle in the palm of their hand. Decades later, collectors began to notice something unusual. A tiny fraction of these coins were struck with such sharpness, such perfection, that they stood out as extraordinary rarities. And in some rare cases, minting errors slipped into circulation, doubled dies, off-center strikes, and highly detailed proof-like surfaces that made dealers stop in their tracks. One particular 1937 penny, preserved in nearly flawless condition, shocked auction houses when it soared into the six figures. But then, another surfaced, a piece so pristine, so breathtaking, that it shattered expectations and climbed into the millions. Collectors were stunned. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on it. And the once-forgotten penny became a star of American coinage history. This penny, worth up to $1.7 million today, wasn't found in a museum or a locked vault. Stories emerged of coins like this turning up in ordinary collections, hidden away in dusty jars, or tucked into the back of an old drawer. One man reportedly discovered his 1937 wheat cent mixed in with decades of pocket change his father had saved. What he thought was just a family keepsake turned into a fortune. Imagine holding something you thought was worth 1 cent, only to discover it could change your life forever. The 1937 no mint mark penny comes from the Philadelphia Mint, which didn't use a mint mark at the time. So you'll see just the date, clean and simple, 1937. On the reverse, the familiar wheat ears stand tall, framing the words 1 cent. But the value isn't just in the date. It's in the condition, the strike, and the tiny variations that separate a normal coin from a $1 million treasure. Collectors look for crisp details in Lincoln's hair and beard, strong wheat lines on the reverse, and a flawless surface with rich luster. Errors like doubled dies or off-center strikes can push the value even higher. And if you find one in mint state, with blazing original red color preserved after nearly 90 years? That's when the coin world goes wild. But here's the part that gives every collector goosebumps. These coins are still out there. They've slipped through the cracks of history, hiding in coffee cans, old cigar boxes, or tucked into family coin albums passed down through generations. And every time one surfaces, it sends shockwaves through the market. So here's what to do. Check your old pennies from the 1930s. If you see a 1937 wheat cent with no mint mark, don't dismiss it as just another copper coin. Study it closely. Look at the details. And if it appears sharp, lustrous, or unusual in any way, have it evaluated by a professional. Because the difference between a common penny and a $1.7 million rarity could be as small as a single overlooked detail. Think about it. The coin you need might already be sitting in your drawer, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. And when it is, it could change everything. But when collectors discovered what it really was, it shocked the entire coin world. A plain, ordinary-looking penny from 1968, no mint mark, nothing flashy about it at first glance. Yet this exact coin has been known to sell for over $1.1 million. How does a single copper coin, the kind most people would toss into a tip jar without thinking twice, transform into a life-changing fortune? The story behind it is full of mystery, mistakes, and miracles. And if you're watching right now, you'll want to check your own pennies carefully, because this exact treasure could be hiding in your home. The year was 1968. America was in turmoil. Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated, the Vietnam War was raging, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents for everyday use. Most were made in Denver or San Francisco, stamped with a tiny D or S mint mark under the date. But then, something strange happened. In Philadelphia, the mint struck pennies without a mint mark, as it traditionally did. But among them were coins with subtle, almost imperceptible differences, striking errors, off-metal compositions, or doubled dies that escaped unnoticed. One of these errors, tied to the no mint mark 1968 Lincoln cent, would go on to stun collectors decades later. One man discovered it in the most unlikely way. He was going through an old jar of change in the early 2000s, coins he had been tossing aside for decades. Dusty, forgotten, nothing special. But then he noticed something, a penny that looked off. The color was slightly unusual, the strike sharper than expected, and, most important of all, no mint mark under the date. What he held in his hand was no ordinary cent. Experts later confirmed it was a rare 1968 no mint mark variety, preserved in pristine condition. When it eventually reached the auction block, the bidding war was fierce. Collectors and dealers alike knew they were looking at something almost no one else on earth possessed. By the time the gavel struck, this tiny coin had climbed to over $1.1 million. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Other collectors started scrambling through their jars, their sock drawers, even old shoeboxes stuffed with change. Dealers were suddenly hunting for 1968 no mint mark pennies in record numbers. And the whispers grew, could there be more of these million-dollar miracles out there? The key lies in the details. Most 1968 pennies without a mint mark are common, worth only a cent or two. But a handful were struck with rare errors, doubled dies on the obverse, unusual compositions that hint at planchet mix-ups, or nearly flawless condition with blazing original luster. These are the ones that transform from pocket change into history-making fortunes. Collectors were shocked to learn that even the smallest detail, the thickness of the lettering, the clarity of Lincoln's profile, or the faint doubling on the date, could mean the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth $1 million. Imagine the thrill of spotting that detail before anyone else. Most people miss it. They spend years handling pennies without ever looking closely. But those who do, those who take a magnifying glass, tilt the coin under the light, and examine every inch, are the ones who make the discoveries that rewrite coin history. One story tells of a collector at a flea market who picked up a handful of old wheat pennies for just a couple of dollars. Buried among them was a brilliant red 1968 Numismatic cent with a double die obverse. He later sold it at auction for hundreds of thousands. That kind of lightning strike is what keeps collectors searching. But here's the twist. Even experts sometimes overlook these coins. They've slipped through coin shops, passed over at estate sales, ignored by banks. One man's pocket change can become another man's $1 million miracle, if only someone notices. First, look under the date. If there's no mint mark, you've cleared step 1. Next, examine the details. Look closely at the word, liberty, and the motto. In God we trust. Doubling, extra thickness, or distortion can signal a valuable error. Then, check the overall condition. The sharper and more pristine the coin, the higher the value skyrockets. Even a tiny scratch can mean thousands lost, but a flawless surface can add hundreds of thousands in value. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these coins, and auctions are breaking records. Every discovery sends a ripple of excitement through the collecting world, reminding us that treasure still hides in plain sight. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now. You might have walked past it, spent it, or ignored it. But if you take the time to look, to really look, you could uncover a coin worth over $1 million. So the next time you see a 1968 penny with no mint mark, don't toss it aside. Hold it up to the light. Study it carefully. Because that little copper coin, the one that almost ended up in the trash, just might change your life forever. The year was 1971. Richard Nixon was president, gas was 36 cents a gallon, and people were tossing pennies into coffee cans without a second thought. Nobody cared about them. They were just tiny copper coins, ordinary, forgettable, and everywhere. But hidden among billions of Lincoln cents struck that year, something extraordinary slipped through the mint's presses. A coin so rare, so mysterious, that decades later it stunned the entire coin world by reaching a value most people only dream about. This wasn't a flashy gold piece or a silver dollar from the Old West. It was just a simple penny, a penny without a mint mark. At first glance, it looked like every other coin rattling around in pocket change. But it wasn't. It was an error, a survivor, a 1 in a billion mistake that transformed into a collector's miracle worth up to $1.2 million. But how does a coin this ordinary become that valuable? That's the mystery that still keeps collectors awake at night. In 1971, the U.S. Mint was striking pennies at 3 main locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Normally, coins from Denver carried the tiny D mint mark. Coins from San Francisco bore the S. But in some rare, almost unexplainable cases, the mint mark was missing entirely. Whether it was a die preparation mistake, a forgotten punch, or a mechanical oversight, the result was breathtaking. An everyday coin, suddenly transformed into a once-in-a-lifetime rarity. Thousands of people had these pennies in their hands and never knew it. They spent them, lost them, dropped them into vending machines. Some may still be buried in old mason jars in basements, or hiding inside dusty coin albums untouched for decades. One story still sends shivers through collectors. A man in the Midwest pulled a handful of change from his pocket after paying for gas. He noticed something odd about 1 penny. No mint mark. He almost spent it again, until a friend who was a coin dealer convinced him to hold on to it. Years later, that same coin shocked the auction world when it crossed the $1 million mark. Collectors were stunned. Dealers rushed to confirm the details. Suddenly, the 1971 no mint mark penny became a legend. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. As news spread, more people started scouring their change. A few lucky discoveries surfaced, each adding fuel to the fire. Prices climbed higher. Excitement grew. And the legend of the 1971 no-mint mark penny was cemented forever. This isn't just about age or condition. It's about the tiniest detail, the missing mint mark. That absence of one single letter can be the difference between 1 cent and over $1 million. But here's where it gets even more unbelievable. Many of these rare pennies were struck in normal circulation quality. That means they don't look like flawless, shiny proof coins. Some are worn. Some look ordinary. But when authenticated, they carry the weight of history and the power of unimaginable value. That's why so many collectors repeat the same warning: never ignore your pennies. And just when collectors thought they had seen it all, another twist appeared. Some 1971 pennies without mint marks were later discovered in rolls and bags, untouched for decades. Imagine opening an old roll of pennies from a bank, expecting just copper coins, and instead pulling out a fortune disguised as pocket change. That's the stuff of coin collecting legend. But what should you look for if you're searching? Start with the basics. A 1971 Lincoln penny that does not show a D or an S beneath the date. Philadelphia coins often had no mint mark, but the rare $1 million examples are tied to unusual striking errors and varieties. Look for crisp details, sharp lettering, and most importantly, professional authentication from a trusted grading service. Many people mistake ordinary 1971 pennies for the rare variety, so caution is key. And here's another piece of advice. Don't clean the coin. Ever. A single scratch or cleaning mark can erase thousands, even hundreds of thousands, from its value. Handle it carefully, keep it protected, and if you think you found one, have it examined by an expert. Collectors know the feeling. The heart races. The palms sweat. You tilt the coin under the light, searching for that tiny missing letter, and suddenly, the realization hits. This could be the coin. This could be the $1 million miracle hiding in plain sight, and that's the magic of it all. A story of luck, history, and pure chance. A penny no one cared about, suddenly becoming a life-changing treasure. So the next time you empty your pockets, don't just glance at your change. That 1971 penny without a mint mark could be the key to your own $1 million story. Because somewhere out there, one of these rare coins is still waiting to be discovered, and it might be sitting in your drawer right now, worth over $1 million. But when it finally came to light, collectors were stunned. Because this humble little coin, a 1942 wheat penny with no mint mark, has sold for up to $1.3 million. Now imagine this for a moment. You're sorting through a handful of pennies. Nothing unusual, just coins you've seen your whole life. But hidden in plain sight is a mistake from the US Mint, a mistake so rare, so mysterious, that it transformed a single cent into a $1 million treasure. The year was 1942. America was deep in World War II. Factories were working around the clock, and even the US Mint was under pressure. Copper was in short supply. It was being used for bullets, wiring, and military equipment. Mistakes slipped through the cracks. Some coins were struck under unusual conditions, using leftover metals, and others carried subtle differences that no one noticed at the time. This is where the story gets interesting. The 1942 no-mint mark penny wasn't supposed to stand out. Millions were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, without a mint mark. But here's the twist. While most of these coins are worth only a few cents, a handful were struck with incredible quality, unusual die errors, or in experimental runs that slipped past inspection. And those are the pennies that today are shaking the coin world. Collectors whisper about them, dealers chase after them, and one lucky discovery can change someone's life forever. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. At an auction, one of these pennies surfaced. At first, it didn't look like much. Worn, darkened by time. But under closer inspection, experts realized it carried the telltale signs of rarity, crisp details, a sharp strike, and preservation far beyond what should have survived from 1942. The bids began slowly. Then they climbed higher and higher, until the hammer dropped, over $1 million. For a single cent, think about that, 0.1 cent. 1 penny. A coin most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground. Now you're probably wondering, what makes these 1942 wheat pennies without a mint mark so special? It's not just the year. It's the story etched into every detail of the coin. Look closely at the lettering, the date, and Lincoln's portrait. High-quality strikes with no mint mark can command unbelievable premiums. If the coin is in pristine, mint state, condition, sharp edges, no wear, no scratches, the value skyrockets. And if you stumble upon an error variety? That's when collectors will pay millions. This is why so many people miss it. They see a penny, they see the date, and they toss it aside. But the difference between an ordinary penny and a life-changing one can come down to the tiniest detail, a detail most people never notice. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. Another collector found his prize in an inherited coin jar. Stories like these spread like wildfire in the coin community, sparking both jealousy and inspiration. Because every coin hunter knows, the next miracle find could be theirs. But here's the question that keeps people awake at night. How do you know if your 1942 wheat penny is the one? Check for the mint mark. If there's no D or S under the date, you've got a Philadelphia strike. Step 2. Look at the condition. If it's bright, sharp, and looks nearly brand new, you may be holding something extraordinary. Step 3. Consult a professional grading service. They'll authenticate and grade your coin, and that grade can be the difference between a few cents and over $1 million. Collectors were shocked when a 1942 penny, tucked away in a private collection, shattered records. Dealers rushed to track down others, searching through old rolls, jars, and estates. And every so often, another one emerges, proof that these treasures are still out there. So the next time you see a 1942 wheat penny with no mint mark, don't dismiss it. Don't let it slip through your fingers. Because it might be the very coin that changes your life. And here's the truth, this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. The 1942 Lincoln wheat penny might look like nothing more than spare change, but hidden in its metal is a story that has shaken the entire coin world. Collectors whisper about it, dealers hunt for it, and every so often, one lucky person stumbles on a life-changing discovery. Imagine holding a coin in your hand that was minted during the height of World War II. America was rationing, families were sacrificing, and the U.S. Mint was experimenting with new ways to save precious metals. Mistakes were made, rare varieties were struck, and some of those mistakes slipped into circulation. That's how the legend of the 1942 began. At first glance, it looks like any other wheat penny. Abraham Lincoln staring proudly from the obverse, the wheat stalks framing the reverse. But hidden within some of these coins are errors so rare that they've transformed a simple cent into $1 million miracle. One collector remembers the moment he discovered his. He was sifting through an old coffee can of change in his grandfather's garage, the kind of coins most people would cash in at the bank without a second thought. But his sharp eye noticed something strange about a 1942 penny with the tiny D mint mark under the date. The weight was slightly off. The color looked different. When experts examined it, their jaws dropped. He was holding a 1942 transitional error, struck on the wrong planchet, a once-in-a-lifetime find. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. That coin sold at auction for a staggering 6 figures, and later, another example shattered expectations by bringing in close to $1.3 million. 1 penny. One coin most people would overlook, suddenly becoming a ticket to fortune. The reason behind this lies in the chaotic environment of the U.S. Mint during the war years. In 1943, pennies were made of steel coated with zinc, saving copper for ammunition. But in late 1942, as the Mint prepared for the transition, a handful of experimental coins were struck using leftover planchets. A few copper cents ended up being pressed on different metals, creating extraordinary rarities. Some even show doubling in the date or the mint mark, and these tiny details are what set them apart from ordinary change. And here's where most people miss it. The difference can be so subtle, so easy to overlook, that thousands of these pennies may have slipped by unnoticed. Dealers are rushing to check every 1942D they encounter, hoping to spot the telltale signs: unusual coloration, incorrect weight, or die errors that only experts know to look for. But don't think these coins are locked away in museums. Stories keep surfacing of everyday people finding them in the most unlikely places. A box of old coins in an attic. A forgotten jar in a basement. A roll of pennies picked up from a local bank. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, and it could happen again. Think about the thrill of knowing that the next time you crack open a dusty coin album or spill a jar of pennies on the table, you could be staring at a fortune hiding in plain sight. That's the power of the 1942 Dewey penny, a coin so deceptively ordinary that it slips past the eyes of millions, but so unbelievably rare that it can change a life overnight. Start with the basics. Look for the 1942 date with the small D mint mark just below. Check the weight. If it doesn't match the standard 3.11 grams for copper, you might be holding an error. Watch closely for unusual coloration or doubling in the date or mint mark. And if something feels even slightly off, get it authenticated by a trusted grading service. Because in the world of coin collecting, even the tiniest detail can be worth a fortune. Collectors were shocked when these coins first hit the auction block, and the frenzy hasn't slowed down. The market value continues to rise as more people realize how few of these exist. Right now, a top-quality example can fetch as much as $1.3 million, and experts believe the next big sale could go even higher. Will the next $1 million penny come from your pocket? Will it be hiding in your change, waiting to be discovered by someone brave enough to look closer? Don't make the mistake of overlooking it. Every coin has a story. And sometimes that story is worth more than you ever imagined. Check your pennies. Check your jars. Check the ones you thought were worthless. Because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. The year was 1969. America was watching the moon landing, Woodstock shook the music world, and in Denver, the U.S. Mint was quietly pressing out millions of Lincoln pennies. Most of them? Ordinary. Everyday pocket change. But buried within those endless stacks of copper was one mistake so rare, so baffling, that today it commands up to $1.4 million. Think about that for a second. A penny, something most people wouldn't bend down to pick up off the sidewalk, worth more than a luxury mansion. It all starts with a mistake. A double die. The kind of minting error so dramatic it practically shouts at you when you hold it under the light. On the 1969 D, some pennies came out with doubling so strong, so clear, that the word liberty looks like it's echoing, and the date 1969 almost seems stamped twice. Collectors call it one of the most powerful double dies ever created. But here's where it gets even stranger. When these coins first started showing up, the government thought they were fakes. The Secret Service literally seized examples from collectors, believing someone was counterfeiting pennies. Imagine having one of the rarest coins in America, only to have it confiscated by the authorities. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Experts eventually confirmed the truth. These weren't fakes at all. They were genuine mint errors slipped through by accident. And that's when the value of this tiny copper coin began to skyrocket. Auction after auction, collectors were shocked. Prices climbed higher and higher, and soon one of these humble Denver minted pennies crossed the $1 million mark. Dealers scrambled, collectors obsessed, and the 1969 D double die became the holy grail of Lincoln cents. Spotting one is easier said than done. Because while millions of 1969 D pennies look normal, only a handful contain this breathtaking error. And even within that handful, condition is everything. One man's pocket change miracle could be worth thousands, or over $1 million. Tilt the coin under the light and stare closely at the date. The doubling is bold. 1969 looks like it's been typed twice with a typewriter. Liberty is doubled, too, with ghost-like letters shadowing each other. And even the phrase "I in God we trust" appears doubled, almost as if the mint was shouting the words instead of stamping them. Collectors have stories that sound like pure legend. A man digging through his father's old jar of change found one. Another stumbled on one while sorting through pennies at a local bank. Each discovery shakes the coin world because it reminds us of a simple truth. Treasures don't always glitter like gold. They can hide in plain copper. Even though experts know about these coins, nobody knows exactly how many survive. Some estimate fewer than 100 exist. Others think even fewer. Every time one surfaces, headlines ripple through the community. Dealers rush to verify it, auction houses battle for it, and collectors whisper about who will strike next. This is why coin hunting never gets old. Because every pocket, every jar, every forgotten roll of pennies could hold the key to a life-changing discovery. So before you dismiss that 1969 D penny, take a closer look. Search for that doubling. Study those letters. Because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. It's worth more than $1 million. Yes, a single penny from 1978, with no mint mark, has stunned collectors and dealers across the country. Because it's not just rare, it's a life-changing treasure hiding in plain sight. Think about it. For decades, people have tossed pennies into jars, piggy banks, and glove compartments without a second thought. The 1978 penny was just another piece of copper-plated change, sliding unnoticed across cash registers and coffee counters. But in reality, a few of these coins were different. A few of them carried a hidden flaw, an invisible secret that transformed a common coin into one of the most valuable mistakes the U.S. Mint has ever produced. And here's the shocking part: most people never see it. Most people spend it, lose it, or bury it in change piles. But a small number of sharp-eyed collectors discovered something extraordinary. And when those discoveries reached the auction block, jaws dropped. A 1978 no-mint mark penny, once worth a single cent, realized a value of up to $1.5 million. To understand why this coin is so valuable, you have to go back to the late 1970s. America was facing inflation, gas prices were soaring, and the penny itself was on the verge of major change. The mint was experimenting, trying to perfect their dies, balancing the demand for billions of coins against the mistakes slipping through. And in 1978, a handful of pennies were struck without their mint mark, a tiny missing letter that most people overlook. But this tiny absence, this so-called nothing, is precisely what made the coin everything. Collectors were shocked when the first examples appeared. How could something so small, so easy to miss, be worth millions? Yet history had already taught us, from rare dimes to doubled dies, that the smallest errors often turn into the biggest jackpots. And this was no exception. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. Imagine the feeling: you're fishing through a handful of coins, ready to pay for a coffee, and there it is. A 1978 penny that looks ordinary to everyone else, but to you, it's a golden ticket. The kind of find that doesn't just change your collection, it changes your life. The coin doesn't scream its value. It whispers it. You have to look closely. Under a magnifying glass, collectors search for the absence of the D or S mint mark below the date. Instead of seeing a small letter stamped beneath 1978, the space is blank. Smooth. Empty. That emptiness is the clue that transforms the coin from a cent into a fortune. And if you're not paying attention, you'll pass it by, like thousands already have. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these. Some call it one of the most important modern rarities of the Lincoln series. Others call it a mystery that still isn't fully explained. How did so many slip out without detection? Was it a deliberate die error, a simple oversight, or something else entirely? To this day, no one truly knows. And that mystery only fuels its legend. At auction, when one of these elusive coins surfaces, the atmosphere changes. The room grows tense. Bidders lean forward. The numbers climb. 100,000, 200,000, $500,000, and then silence. Broken only when the hammer falls near $1.5 million. Collectors leave in disbelief. Newspapers call it unbelievable. And yet, for the lucky owner, it's reality. This tiny copper coin, once lost in pocket change, now stands as a symbol of luck, persistence, and the hidden treasures of American money. Every year, news stories surface of people discovering fortunes in coin jars, drawers, and inherited collections. Some discoveries happen at flea markets. Others happen at garage sales. But the most unbelievable ones happen in everyday life. A coin pulled out of a vending machine, a penny spotted in a tip jar. That's what makes this story so powerful. The 1978 no mint mark penny isn't locked away in a museum. It's still out there, circulating, hiding, waiting to be found. Here's the simple truth. Grab a magnifying glass. Find your 1978 pennies. And look just below the date. If you see no mint mark at all, no D for Denver, no S for San Francisco, then hold on to that coin. Get it verified by a professional grading service. Because you might be holding a piece worth up to $1.5 million, but be careful. Counterfeits exist. Some try to remove mint marks to fake the error. Experts know how to spot these fakes instantly. That's why authentication is everything. Only a true no mint mark 1978 penny, confirmed and graded, will carry that $1 million value. How many were spent at grocery stores, dropped in parking lots, or tossed into fountains? And how many are still hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with sharp eyes and a bit of luck to uncover them? This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. The year was 1979. The disco era was fading, gas prices were climbing, and the Denver Mint was producing millions of pennies stamped with that familiar little D mint mark. They were meant to be ordinary coins, destined to be spent at grocery stores, diners, and gas stations across America. But hidden among the billions of copper-plated coins, a few rare mistakes slipped through the cracks, errors so unusual, so mysterious, that today they can turn a single penny into a life-changing treasure. Collectors were stunned when one of these 1979 Denver Mint pennies appeared at auction. At first glance, it looked like just another coin you'd brush past and change. But upon closer inspection, it revealed secrets that shocked the numismatic world. A misstruck die, a doubling in the design, or a minting anomaly invisible to the casual eye turned this simple penny into a miracle of rarity. When the hammer fell, the final bid wasn't a couple of dollars, it wasn't a few thousand, it was hundreds of thousands, climbing toward a staggering $1.6 million. But what happened next stunned everyone. Word spread like wildfire. Dealers began rushing to check their inventories. Collectors who had dismissed their jars of pennies scrambled back, looking for that elusive 1979 D error. One man told a story of finding his in a dusty coffee can tucked away in the garage, a coin he almost gave to his kids for a school project. That single penny turned out to be worth more than his house. It isn't just the date or the mint mark that makes this coin special. It's the microscopic details. On some 1979 D Lincoln pennies, you'll find doubling on the lettering of Liberty, or even on Lincoln's profile itself. On others, the rim and fields reveal striking anomalies that shouldn't exist. Most people would never notice them. But for those who do, that tiny detail is why these coins are worth millions. Imagine the shock of sliding a penny across the counter at a diner, only to learn years later that you had just handed away a small fortune. That's exactly what happened to one unsuspecting spender. His coin resurfaced decades later in a collector's hands, and sold for more than $1 million. One man's pocket change became another man's miracle. Check your coins carefully. Look at every 1979 penny with a Denver D mint mark. Under a magnifying glass, pay attention to the details, doubling in the lettering, any unusual strikes on Lincoln's face, or a rim that looks thicker on one side. Flaws like die cracks, off-center strikes, or planchet errors can all multiply the value. To most eyes, they look like small imperfections. But in the world of coin collecting, they are golden tickets. Collectors are still searching. Dealers are still paying. And the market is hotter than ever. A coin like this can change hands in seconds, because everyone knows what's at stake. One lucky discovery could turn an overlooked penny into $1 million miracle. So the next time you reach into your pocket, don't just brush past those pennies. Look closely. That 1-cent coin could be hiding a story worth more than you ever dreamed. Because this exact 1979 D Lincoln penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. But instead, it shocked collectors when it sold for nearly $1 million. Imagine reaching into your pocket for loose change and pulling out a penny that looks ordinary, worn down, and brown with age, only to find out it could make you a millionaire. That's the story of the 1946 wheat penny with no mint mark. At first glance, it doesn't look like much. Just another coin from the post-war years, when millions of Lincoln cents were circulating across America. People bought candy bars, sodas, and even train tickets with this same coin. Nobody thought twice about it. But buried within this year's mintage lies a mystery, and a mistake, so valuable that it transformed a single cent into a life-changing fortune. The year was 1946. The world had just come out of World War II. Factories across the United States had shifted from making weapons back to making consumer goods. The U.S. Mint was under pressure, striking millions upon millions of coins to fuel the booming post-war economy. Most of those coins were ordinary, but every once in a while, a small imperfection in the minting process created something extraordinary, and that's where the legend of the 1946 no mint mark wheat penny begins. On the surface, it seems common. After all, Philadelphia, the main mint, didn't use a mint mark at the time. But what makes this coin different isn't just the missing mint mark, it's the subtle errors, the doubled dies, the missed strikes, and the near-perfect preserved survivors that have turned heads at major auctions. Collectors were stunned when one of these rare examples crossed the auction block. A penny that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up from the sidewalk, suddenly commanding a hammer price in the hundreds of thousands, climbing all the way up to an astonishing $1.7 million. One man's pocket change literally became a miracle. You see, once that first coin sold for such an unbelievable figure, the search began. Dealers, collectors, even everyday people with jars of pennies in their attics started looking closer at their coins. Because if one existed, there could be more. And each one, in the right condition, could be worth more than a luxury home, more than a sports car, more than most people make in a lifetime. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The wheat penny design, with Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the front and the 2 wheat stalks on the back, was already a classic. But it was also prone to minting errors. On some of the 1946 no mint mark pennies, doubling can be seen on the letters, "In God We Trust," or the date itself. Others show unusual die cracks or a sharper strike that preserve details most coins lost to wear. Combine rarity with high demand, and suddenly you have the recipe for $1 million coin. Collectors whisper about one particular example that was found in circulation decades after it was minted. Imagine someone paying for coffee with it, completely unaware. The coin then changing hands again and again until a sharp-eyed numismatist finally recognized it for what it was. That discovery changed everything. But here's where the story gets even more fascinating. Not all 1946 pennies are valuable, far from it. Millions were made, and most are only worth a few cents. But the rare survivors in pristine condition, or those with dramatic minting errors, are what every collector dreams about. These coins have been locked away in private collections, traded behind closed doors, and guarded like treasures. Because demand is so high, and supply is so incredibly low. The 1946 wheat penny with no mint mark, in certain grades and with specific features, has become almost mythical. Each time one shows up at auction, bidding wars erupt. Prices soar. And ordinary people watch in disbelief as a single cent crosses into million-dollar territory. One story tells of a man who discovered his grandfather's old coin collection in a dusty cigar box. Among the silver dollars and nickels, he found a wheat penny dated 1946. At first, he assumed it was nothing special, until an appraisal revealed the truth. That penny, tucked away and forgotten for decades, was valued at over $1 million. Overnight, his inheritance became a life-changing fortune. But here's the question everyone wants answered. How do you know if the 1946 wheat penny in your pocket is one of these $1 million miracles? It must say 1946. Second, look for the absence of a mint mark under the date. That's the Philadelphia strike. Third, study it closely under a magnifying glass. Look for doubling on the words liberty and In God we trust. Look for sharp details on Lincoln's beard, hair, and coat, signs of a strong strike. And most importantly, check its condition. The fewer scratches, the sharper the luster, the higher the value. Don't confuse an ordinary circulated penny with the rare gem. Most 1946 pennies are common and worth little more than face value. But those rare varieties, combined with top condition, are what break records. And remember, every great coin discovery starts with someone who was curious enough to look. That's the secret. So next time you see a 1946 wheat penny with no mint mark, don't shrug it off. Don't toss it back into circulation. Take a closer look, because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million.